He smiled slightly. As there seems no immediate danger of the race dying out, I leave marriage to the people who like it. Henry looked down at his questions, his heart blundering in his chest. He saw, over the top of the paper, Jack uncross his legs. The sound of Edith's pen went on for a few moments and then came to a stop. What sort of man attracts you? Jack made a small noise in his throat. One finger arched itself on his knee. It was older men at first, 20 years older. Boys my own age were too similar. To me, I mean. Anxious, havering, over-eager to talk. I could do all that just as well on my own, asking why, how, what to do about it. Older men were no longer interested in those questions. I have since changed my mind. I like men my own age. Do you feel any moral qualms? No. The answer came out baldly. None at all. I did once. Now I cannot see where affection between people of the same sex differs from love as it is ordinarily understood. Everything I have ever read in books or seen in plays, everything I have seen in my life of ordinary love, I have known in inverted form. It cannot ever seem unnatural or abnormal because it has been natural and spontaneous in me. Jack's eyes were soft with tears. Thank you, Henry said. That is the end. The tears spilled down Jack's cheeks, but he made no effort to clear them. Of course, he said, there is a barrier between the ordinary and myself, but I am sure there is less nastiness between men than there is between men and women. That is how it appears to me. We're in 1895 and Oscar Wilde is arrested and put on trial and sentenced for homosexual offences. And what happens then is that John and Henry meet for the first time, and they have their first meeting and they discuss what to do about the book. And Henry finds John in a, well, you'll see. So John is the gay man. And it might come up that his lover Frank is also in the room. Mr. Fever, he might be referred to as. It is the worst thing I could have imagined, Henry, he said. It is worse, in fact. The country has choked itself on ill feeling, gorged on misery and heavy morals, laughed themselves sick. I have never known anything so ugly. It seems hard labour is not enough for the crime, though it will likely kill him. I doubt even that would satisfy them. It is something I hadn't foreseen, Henry said, though in truth it was the realisation of his worst imaginings too. There was in Addington's voice and movements a fast, palpitating quality that made him especially hard to look at. It was not nervousness, Henry didn't think, but rather some overactivity of mind, not wholly disciplined.
Buckle up.
So well here.
So I'm just going to start by reading the first poem in this book. This poem is called Astrological Storms. I am what they call extremely bisexual. Extremely, for I can only be an extremity or a non-entity. What is a man? What is a woman? Asked Mishima in 1950. What are genders and sexualities? I ask in 2020. And before I know it, I realize I am a woman stuck in a sacred circle, asked to pray, to work, to learn. And before I know it, I dream I am a boy desperate for the dark man of my dreams. There is a list, but only a few can make it. My lovers agree on one thing, that I stink. I bathe in mirrors, moonbeams, and blossoms, so perhaps I only stink of treachery. For I cannot be loyal to ideas, to deities, to deities, even to my astrological signs. I justify my mood swings and storms of heart by my Gemini moon, like a basic bitch from Starbucks. But my Taurus sun makes me carry my assurance like a torch. My brother says, how are you so sure? How can you be so certain whom and what you want? His Virgo sun analyzes everything until we both bleed. He is eternally ambivalent, pensive, and pained. I am profoundly impulsive, explosive, and pained. Two wrecked emotion machines. We are twins. We stroll around every nasty city we are allowed in, holding hands, pretending we own every land we step on like a pair of otherized yet middle-class snobs. I know I have been fetishized, but I'm a fetishist myself. He loves his sad modernists, and I revel in my egregious transgressionists. We explore each other as we enter the light. I realize it is my lack of ambivalence that makes me stink. This assurance of mine means when I desire something, the urge is strong. And when I'm supposed to desire something, but the urge is non-existent, I cannot even feign interest. Despite acting all young and fluid, I'm stuck in my old ways like a blind bull in stormy weathers. It is true that desire can get in the way of life, be impossible. Deranged desire might even kill. I'm not lucky, but I owe it to her to be faithful to myself. And when she's writhing and screaming under my tongue, when she bruises my breasts, I finally feel religious, out of this world, freed, transcendent. This was when Nima and I first kissed. It wasn't massively exciting, but it was good enough. We didn't have sex though, as we didn't have any place that wasn't full of our watchful family members. My heart didn't race as we kissed in my car, but it did race when I told Ali about it, who obviously wanted photos. And when I showed him Nima's Instagram account, he just said, well done. The sad prince of the Iranian blogosphere and the sad prince of my heart. How can I possibly describe this ethereal being? I'm just gonna stop there. If you want to read the rest of this story, I'm afraid you're gonna have to go find this anthology called New Decadence Evangelion, this stunning anthology. And I'm so pleased that my story has found a home in this beautiful book.
Susan's lips pursed. She's allowed to go out as long as she comes home first and gets back for tea. It's only an hour. Except on Thursdays? Carter kept the question neutral, but she caught Susan's glance at David. I go over to help at my sister's place. She's on her own with 3 kids and she has to take the eldest to hospital on Thursdays. Susan coughed into the hand that held her cigarette, scattering ash onto Carter's shoulder. So when Caitlin wasn't... David jumped in before Carter had finished the sentence. I thought she was with Susie. When her sister said Caitlin wasn't with her, I went out to look. Susan Thompson took a step towards her husband and held onto his arm. We should be looking for her. Now. You, she turned to Carter, you'll help us, won't you? They should be out there looking for her. We are, Mrs. Thompson. We're in touch with the school and Caitlin is registered as a missing person. She's 10. The mother shivered. A missing child, yes. Carter stubbed out her cigarette before she could finish it. This friend, Ruby. Any idea why she didn't say at the time that Caitlin hadn't turned up? Susan's eyes closed for a moment. She didn't want to get Kate in trouble. At that age, they get other friends and... Her voice broke. Where is she? Where's my baby? Tears slicked down her grey face. From the corner of the walkway, the dog stared back at them, head to one side. Carter took a deep breath as her thoughts connected. What about your dog, Spencer? Where was Spencer when you were all out? David Thompson shook his head. What? With me? said Susan, a catch in her throat. He always comes with me. I take him to the laundrette when I'm at work and he comes to my sister's, always. You can't leave a dog on its own all day, you can't. Her voice trailed to a sob as her husband put a hand on her back and the couple bent into each other. Carter watched them, the wind grazing her eyes in the darkening December light. She had grown up here, somewhere like this, a smaller estate, less than an hour east of this place, with her own family and a dog and the chill that seeped into your blood. But that family hadn't held one another. That dog hadn't gone out, and no one looked for you when you didn't come home. What's your name? Paul. Thank you. Several of my characters in the book are deaf, and so it's wonderful to have you here tonight. Thank you. And Isabel is the older girl who, well, she's in her 20s now, and it's her diary that we've seen in between. And she has gone on a date with her upstairs neighbour, who's been trying to communicate with her. He's hearing. It's gone okay. In the end, the ordering and the meal proved much simpler than Isabel had thought. There was the plain rice and fried cauliflower and a hot cheese that did not have sauce on it, only some spices that were quite pleasant. There was also spinach, but she thought it looked like something had been added to it, so she put a small amount on her plate when she'd nearly finished, to show willing. The waiter understood when she asked for no sauce, and she liked the way that all the food came in separate dishes so that you could help yourself. She wished they had chopsticks. It was harder to rub a fork clean on a napkin, but other than that, she enjoyed it all. Dan hadn't been exaggerating about his ability or his enthusiasm to speak at length. He made her laugh more than once, and she read most of what he said. Now she was sitting alone at the table watching him make his way back to her from the toilet. He was grinning and shaking his head. Well, he sat back in his seat. I've aged, Isabel. Bloke in the toilet thought we'd gone to school together. Must have been 5 years older than me. He finished his coffee in one gulp and started to put his jacket on. Isabel's coat was still damp. She plucked her purse out of the pocket and offered Dan some money. I've paid the bill. Dan tapped his wallet on the table. I asked you out, it's only fair. Thank you, Isabel signed. She put the purse away.